Hi, it's Heather Joy with Perfectly Curated Life. Thank you for joining me today. This afternoon, I'm going to be making a pork ragu. It comes together really seamlessly. It only requires about 30 minutes of prep time, and then the rest of the time is in the oven. I know that most of the country is under a weather advisory, and this really is a perfect winter meal because once you put it into the oven, the aroma just kind of fills the house. You're going to be indoors anyway because it's so cold and so snowy outside, and it just gives you that nice, cozy wintertime feeling. So let's run through the ingredients that we're going to use first, and then we'll get down to the cooking. To start, we have a pork butt. This has a bone in, and it's about 3.5 pounds of pork butt, which I have already seasoned with some salt and pepper. Then we have a couple of cloves of garlic minced up, 1 leek this is a Vidalia onion that I've also minced, and those are coming in season soon. We'll be doing a whole special on Vidalia onions, which are unique to a certain part of Georgia. They don't grow anywhere else in the world. For our herbs, we have some thyme, rosemary, and a little bit of fresh oregano. Then I have some diced bell pepper and roughly diced tomatoes, Roma tomatoes, and then 1 red onion chopped, and about 16 ounces of tomato sauce. I'm going to use the tomato sauce first, and then toward the end add in the diced tomatoes just to give it a nice fresh hit of tomato acid taste. And then for our other seasonings, we have a dash of hot sauce, red wine. This is a South African wine from Stellenbosch, which is down near Cape Town, and then also a little bit of smoked paprika. So basically the recipe works like this. We sear the meat, take it out. Then we mix in all the vegetables and the liquids, put the meat back in, and then pop the whole thing into a nice low oven. It's going to be at 325, and we're going to let it cook for 3.5 hours. And that really gives those fibrous pork tenderloins a time to break down. The combination of the heat and the acid will work together to really tenderize that meat, but it needs some time in order for that effect to take place. So 3.5 hours, and then by dinner time you'll be ready to go. So give me just a few moments. I'm going to set up to start cooking, and then we will go from there. See you soon. All right, so the first step is to brown the pork, and we want to brown it on all sides. I'm going to put in a mixture of butter and oil to give it the perfect environment in which to brown. So let me add that in. And this pan is already a little bit warm, so don't have much to do there. Just gonna let that butter kind of melt down and mix in, and that really produces the optimum kind of brown that you want on your meat. The other thing is you want your meat to be nice and dry before you cook with it. You cannot brown wet meat, so if it has any moisture on it, just take some paper towels and kind of pat that moisture off so that you can really get a good, nice brown crust. So I'm just mixing now the 2 fats together, and those are just about ready. And I'm going to take my pork and just pop it in. This is heavy, so gotta be careful. I'm gonna put it fat down side first, fat side down. So I'm gonna just let that rest and hang out for about 4 or 5 minutes. Check it. Once the meat releases cleanly and easily from the pan, that means that it's probably cooked enough, it's brown enough. But you really want to give it some time to get that nice deep brown caramel color. It's going to help the meat, and it'll also help to better season the aromatics and vegetables that we're going to add in. All right, so the pork, as you can see, is nice and brown. We've got that beautiful little crust on top. So now we're going to use the same Dutch oven that we used to brown it to add in our vegetables. So I'm going to start with the onions. And we're just going to cook these long enough for them to start sweating. They'll do most of their cooking in the oven. I'm going to add in the bell peppers. And my garlic. Give those a nice little stir. There's plenty of fat in here from the rendered fat that came out of the pork. So we don't need to add anything else in order to saute these a little bit. I'm gonna just throw in some salt and pepper to taste here. Okay. Now I'm going to add in my other onions. And these are very soft tasting, kind of sweet, mild onion. So they're not going to be super pungent. They just add a little bit of complexity and dimension to the flavoring. I'll use some. Okay. So our vegetables are looking quite delicious. Now I'm going to add in the tomato paste, or tomato sauce rather. And let me stir that first before I add the wine. You want the liquid to come about 2/3 of the way up on the pork butt. So if the pork butt is this, we want the liquid to come right about there throughout the cooking process. So you'll be checking this every hour or so just to add more liquid and to check the levels. In order for the meat to cook properly, it needs to have that much liquid in it, and we're eventually going to tear the meat apart, and this is going to be the actual ragu sauce that we're making, and so we don't want that to be completely dried out. We need to have some liquid there in order to make the sauce. So I'm going to add in my wine, about a cup to start. Let's see here. Okay, one more for good measure. Then a little bit of hot sauce and some smoked paprika just for smokiness. So about a teaspoon there. Okay. And then a tiny bit of smoked paprika. Okay. I'm going to stir that all together. I'm going to turn off the heat here. So we're done with that. And then I'm going to place the pork back in this Dutch oven. Okay. So let me show you what it's going to look like. This Dutch oven has handles that get very hot even on the stove top, so you have to be careful. So you see that the liquid comes about 1/3 of the way up. I don't know if I can get a good angle on here. And it's very important, you're going to cover this. You want that steam to capture in the lid and then come back down on the meat, and that helps to make it nice and tender. So I'm going to check this after 1 hour and then after 2 hours. In the 3rd hour, I'm going to add in those diced Roma tomatoes in that very last hour of cooking. Oh, you know, guys, I forgot something. We don't want to do that. Forgot to add in the herbs. That's the most important part. So I'm just going to place the sprigs of thyme and rosemary and the fresh oregano kind of around the edges here, and these will break down as the dish cooks. It would have been better if I put them in, but it's not the end of the world that I didn't. So just kind of mix those in there. And you're going to make sure to take out anything that has a stalk in it before you serve it. So just like I said a couple weeks ago that we always take out the bay leaf, in this case we're going to take out the rosemary because it still has a stem on it. It's not just the sprigs. And then also the thyme, because that central stem is very tough and you can't eat it. So we don't want to put that in the actual final presentation. But that won't happen for another couple of hours. Right now, I'm just going to put this in. The oven's at 325. I'm going to check it after the 1st hour. If I need to add some more liquid to keep it at that 2/3 level, I'll add in some more wine or some more tomato sauce, whatever your choice is. I'm going to check it again at hour 2. And at the end of hour 2, I'm going to add in the fresh Roma tomatoes toward the very end of the cooking process when it only has 45 minutes or an hour left, to make sure that that sauce is nice and bright and has that beautiful acidic tomato flavor. The other thing that we're going to do when this has fully cooked and had a chance to set a little bit is we're going to tear the meat off. So it's kind of like pulled pork in that way, the texture is, but the flavor is completely different. And then lastly, we're going to serve this with the starch of our choice. So traditionally, this would be served with a wide, flat noodle, like a pappardelle. For some reason, I've been to like 4 grocery stores and they only have a basic array of different pasta shapes. So the widest noodle that I could find locally is fettuccine, which is only about that wide. You want something that's nice and wide. In the event that you cannot find the wide, flat noodle, you'll do well to have a shaped noodle that has some sort of ridge on it. So a ziti or a macaroni elbow, but jumbo size with the ridges in it. And a lot of the pasta companies play around with the having ridges and not having ridges. So you need to look, but they are out there. But anything that's smaller but shaped will also help hold that pasta sauce. So with a heavier sauce, you want something that's going to be able to trap up all of those little gooey bits of sauce and meat and kind of get into those crevices, and a shaped pasta will do that for you. So let's pop this in and check on it in another hour. Okay, it's been about 2.5 hours. The meat has cooked a lot. It still needs about an hour more in there. But now we're going to add in those Roma tomatoes directly into the pot. And just let those cook down for the last hour of cooking time. Again, with the lid on. And at about the half-hour mark, you should probably stir this just to make sure those tomatoes are getting mixed in well with the juices from the meat. All right, so that's how we look right now. Let me just show you very quickly. And it's still very, very hot. So we're gonna let that cook for 45 minutes to an hour more, then take it out and shred the meat. This has now been cooking for 3.5 hours. You can see the tomatoes are cooked down. I'm going to let this cool and then start to pull apart the pork, put it back in the sauce, and then stir it all together so that it can form the ragu. Okay, so the meat is all done. I've made my pasta. I want you to put a little bit of the meat sauce in the drained pasta after the pasta is almost finished cooking. Cook it with the pasta and the meat sauce for about 1 minute so that it's going to look like this. Your pasta should be al dente, not too done, just nice and firm to the bite. You're gonna cook the meat sauce down with it, and then at the very end, add a little bit of the ragu on top like this, okay? Just a tiny bit. And then you're gonna take your good Parmesan and just sprinkle a little bit of this shredded Parmesan over the top, and then you are ready to go. Ragu, pork ragu from scratch. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you soon.